Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, the all-in-one website builder to showcase your portfolio and online shop, all in one place, all on your terms. Restarting my portfolio and nurturing my artistic interests and stories is what I truly want to do with my artwork this year. I still feel like I'm in the beginning of my professional career as an artist, but what if you're just starting out learning and developing your skills? Or what if you've been doing art for what seems like forever and you're still not to the place you want to be? Or what if you're just starting your journey right now later in life and you feel like you're behind on everything? A lot of questions, but let's just start small in today's video. So, welcome back to my channel and to the first video of 2024. Thank you all for the well wishes during my break. I rediscovered my love of reading and finally read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I also read In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And the rest of the time I just spent with family and reflecting on the past year and determining where I want to go next with my artwork and thinking about kind of restarting everything and resetting. So there was a portion of last year's bacon draw that I had to cut for time. Me cut something for time, never heard of that. And also I had to cut it for topic reasons, but I really want to share it with you as we enter the new year. I had a really great conversation with Steven at Nauseous Dog on Instagram, amazing artist and just so happens to be my boyfriend, so go check out his work. In the context, talking about art school, we talked a lot about comparison, artist age versus skill, expectations of what our art should look like or where our skills should be based on arbitrary standards. And I think this conversation is just a good reminder to let go of certain expectations or certain standards in the new year, no matter what age or skill level you are at as an artist, and just create what is meaningful to you and strive to move closer to your goals, whatever goals those might be, in just a positive manner. So here's that conversation now. But before we get too deep into the video, I'd like to talk about the lovely sponsor of this video, Squarespace. I was working a little bit on my website over winter break and was able to finalize a portfolio page to suit my professional needs as both an artist and content creator. With Squarespace's Fluid Engine design system, I can drag and drop text, images, shapes, and even animations onto a page. Their customizable design templates make my art stand out and inspire me to reach my goal of building a strong portfolio of work this year that I will be proud of. I'm also in the process of moving my online store to my Squarespace site, so hopefully I have some stickers coming soon. But the ability to sell digital and physical products along with the ability to add print-on-demand extensions makes me more confident in expanding my income sources and encourages me to continue to paint my silly cowboy pictures. So if you're wanting to establish yourself professionally or heck, even casually online and make a super cool blog based on whatever niche interest you're fixated on at the moment, you can go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/sketchesofshay to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using my code SKETCHESOFSHAY. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for continuing to watch my videos so that I can continue to get more sponsors like these. It's never too late to start, and it's never too doomed to continue your art because it's so valuable and no one else is going to make the art that you're going to make. And I feel like that problem has just gotten so much worse with social media and people putting their age in the browse, which is also helpful with safety with minors and stuff like that. But sometimes it can be disheartening to find new art that you like and you check their bio and it's like a 16-year-old and you're like, cool, yeah. I think it could be disheartening. I think if you come from a place of lower self-esteem with your technical skills in art and you see that someone younger than you is doing very well, or you personally think wow, they're at a very skillful level right now. I think it's important to remember in those times that there is no actual objective standard, I think, of skill in your own creation. I think that there are technical, you can quantify that skill in terms of class, you're being critiqued or graded on a certain representation of something as accurately as possible. But I don't feel like you should feel that your art was any less important than that art. And I think that could be what a lot of young people think when they see artists that have had that refined form of study
and then see that they're still at a quote unquote unrefined, you know, time in their life or time in their like expression through art, that they'll think, oh, like what I'm making is too fun or immature or not really, I'm not applying a lot of technical skill right now, and everyone else seems to be doing that. But I just think that we're comparing ourselves to each other way too much. I think that it's beyond age and beyond if you've gone to school for art or not. I think it's just like you need to work on your own, like what you've mentioned, self-advocacy, I think is a great term for everyone to apply to their own artistic expression. And just knowing that you need to make this for you, and you need to continue to make it for you if you want to see anything happen with it. Because I think it's impossible and inaccurate to assume that you're ever at a doomed state in your, or doomed like phase or something. I don't think that an art block or being at an unrefined like level of art creation means that you're doomed to stay at that. Or is it even bad to be at that in the first place? I think so many of these public perceptions that we have of like being an older person, and suddenly that gives you like more skill or more authority over like what you can say about art and what you can do. I think that that's completely like subjective, and I don't think that there needs to be a I don't know how to word it. The standardization of art, I think, is really harmful, is what I'm trying to say. Struggling to find like an air of optimism in it, because it can be so, I don't want to say soul crushing, but it can be detrimental to someone who's just trying to like express something rather than like represent or like, do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do understand, because like expressing something doesn't always like pertain to a certain like
to a technical
predetermined
skill.
Like skill level or subject matter, or even just like,
I guess I'm specifically talking about like representative art in this circumstance.
And I would say, because there's so much people placing value on artwork that's skillful, that's like you can read it really well, it's representative, over works that are like more abstract or like conceptual. Is that like something more that you're talking about?
I guess so, yeah, because I think that there can be artists that are students that are coming into like an institution and then realizing that their art may not meet a standard, because it's not like, if it is abstract, if it is like without so much of like conventional calculation to be produced, like it's hard to put that in a box, which is what a school would want to do generally. So it's just, I don't know, I think that you really do need that like connection with a professor or something to be able to understand that, like, I don't know, art is so flexible. How are you able to put it in this curriculum and this rubric, basically, this grading rubric, when it's going to be so different for every single student bringing in an assignment? So I know that that's something that we like, or we as in professors, like would try to accomplish, like make a standard rubric, but it's so hard to just imagine such a like universally abstract concept as art in like 5 boxes on a rubric. I just
the influence you get from school can be dangerous and make you view your art differently and feel like you have to perform at a certain level or in a certain style to be considered like a serious artist or to get a job. And while I do think like learning specific skills to get a specific industry job, like if you're learning
makes sense.
That makes sense. But specifically with like illustration and fine art, the stuff where you have more wiggle room with, it's just like,
let me wiggle. Like what? That's the whole point of like this artistic expression and this like autonomy that you have as an artist. It feels very like you're out of control in certain circumstances of being in a class.
Or you like, it gets more emotional for me, because it would feel like if I turned in a certain work that I knew a professor would kind of like speak down on, or just like not like as much, it would be disappointing to them. I don't want to disappoint them because that sucks. So I'd want to make art that was like curated for that professor, but that becomes really dangerous, because then you're just making art for like the viewer and like other people's like preferences and stuff, and then you're stuck there making art you don't like, and then you hate your life and you hate what you're making, and then it becomes a dangerous thing to where it's like, do I even want to be an artist anymore? Or like, this isn't fun anymore. And I feel like a lot of people come out of art school super burnt out because also the rigorous like assignments all the time, always creating, as well as creating for a certain person to get the grade that you want to pass the class.
I think it ends up putting you in a very like almost dark and vulnerable place where you're now creating art solely for acceptance of that art and not for like a challenge, not for yourself really. I think that a lot of pandering can be like, what's it called, curated from that type of environment where it's like a form of people pleasing.
Yep.
So
that's me.
That's you. Yeah, like that's. But I would, like you said, it's never too late to continue pursuing pieces of an education, and you can always still add things to your portfolio and always still add things to your scope of, education, seeking a higher education in business.
Yeah. I think we just like to romanticize teenage years and early 20s, or just 20s in general, to be like,
I figured everything out.
Yeah, you figured everything out. Oh, your art is amazing by the time you reach 20, when you're no longer a teenager.
No.
Those are like ideas that are prevalent, where like once you're an adult, oh yeah, my art should be better, like it should be so much better, when in actuality it takes a long time to build your skills, and it's really dangerous. And we said, social media just exacerbates that.
Absolutely.
So it's tough, but I feel like having more conversations and being transparent with things like this, that everyone kind of struggles with the comparison, and letting people know that like you don't have to be at a certain point in your life just because that's like maybe a common thread among people, or it's just like you see it from a lot of people online. And I feel like a lot of that, I wanted to mention that not everyone like grows up with the same access to either like art supplies, or it's not as encouraged in their family, or like they don't have someone who was like one-on-one encouraging them like throughout their life. So I feel like that also has to be acknowledged, because like everyone grows up differently. You have different resources. You grow up with different like financial situations, or you like maybe like didn't even consider art for like most of your childhood, and then you discover that you really like drawing when you're like 30. So you just like start.
There is no standardized timeline for any of these things or any of these developments to happen. It is completely on an individualized basis, and I would say it's so harmful to think that what you mentioned, like a one size fits all. There's absolutely not one. Yeah, and I think I mentioned already how it could not be feasible to like standardize any of that, but to think that you ever have to meet a standard to be considered valuable in your art, for you to be considered valuable, for your art to be considered worth looking at or worth making, that should never be determined by factors of like being unable to pay for an art school education, or just maybe time, maybe just not having found that passion until later in your life. I don't think that any external factor should determine whether or not you continue to make art.
It can sometimes be scary to like show up to an art class and you're just surrounded by like teenagers or something when you're like 35 or something. But that just, I feel like that just shows that you're passionate and you just want to do that for yourself, and I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, something worth being like admired for, and like I don't know, being like commended for, being brave and being an advocate for yourself, like still showing up for yourself even that much later in your life. That should never be like looked down upon, and that's why I'm saying, like, with newer generations, I hope that is instilled in them. I hope that there's like a broader worldview being instilled in them, just like more global awareness, and then also interpersonal awareness, like being able to interact with your classmate who is starting their education much later in life, and still being able to like offer them help or listen to their like insights and stuff, and just kind of bounce things back and forth with that person without any prejudice or without any preconceived notion of like anything based on their age. That's just
And then it just makes me so sad when I see people, like, I hate to bring it up, but like AI art, where they start to use that as a means to make the art that they want to make, because they'll say like, oh, I could never learn drawing or painting because it would take too long, or I just don't have the natural skill for it. When it's just like, or they feel like they started too late in life.
Doomed, like you're mentioning.
And it's just like such like a disservice to yourself to like kind of neglect that part of like wanting to like start to create, and using basically stolen art,
cheating on
that's what it is. Practice. They like to dance around it, and they're like, no, we created this, and yes, they'll spend like hours trying to get a result that they want, but they're building that from something that's been stolen, like without the artist's permission. it's just sad because it's just like, you could like do this. It may take some time, but like it's worth it to yourself to like allow yourself the freedom to just express. And then it just comes back to that idea of where it doesn't have to look a certain way.
Exactly.
Unless you're working for someone, then like, yeah, they're gonna have like,
no, there's exceptions like that.
Yeah. Where they want
like,
you to draw a certain way or do a different or do a certain style and have a certain like skill level of being able to like realize things in like a representational manner. But like for yourself, if you just want to create things, then you shouldn't like
don't let anyone tell you not to or to do it in a different way than you were already planning on. Don't let your professors or your classmates or just people in your life affect how you create art and when you create art. So
and I feel like that's like such an important thing to remember through any of this. If you decide to go to art school, cool. If you don't, cool. If you like just plan on making art still like a hobby or just something you do on the side, that's amazing too.
It's okay to feel like, let's say you're someone who's starting to create and like, you know, represent things visually, and you start to feel like, oh, what I'm making right now is ugly. Like this is not to a standard that I'm holding myself to. I'm not at this skill level yet. I think it's important to remember that that's a completely subjective personal opinion as well, to have called it ugly in the first place or call it like anything less than what it actually is. Like being very like, I don't want to say self-sabotagey, but just being almost mean to your own artwork at a age or at a state of being where you have not created a lot of artwork, or you have created a lot of artwork. Being like overly negative is just going to promote like a spiraling, like a slippery slope where you're breaking that relationship with your artwork, like you were mentioning. And I don't think that excessive negativity is like conducive to keeping that like authenticity with your artwork. So
because those like negative thoughts just build on each other.
It starts to like create an illusory effect where you're like, now I have this super negative perception of my artwork. It's not meeting any made up standard. It's just
I do think on the other hand, like having like being able to like analyze your artwork or like critique it if you are trying to kind of follow like some sort in like trying to make your artwork read a certain way, however that intention is, having a critical eye for that is like helpful, and it's important to improving if you're trying to be more representative with your artwork. But like you're saying, when it just becomes like you're just trying to improve all the time and just trying to find like the mistakes and being super negative, then that's just going to affect the further artworks that you do.
You're setting yourself up for a disappointment.
And it's just building a like continual negative
spiral.
When it should be like, oh, like maybe you do have a like a critical eye for something, but then you just like acknowledge that and you're just like, but I'm still creating something, like I'm still making something.
It's healthier to acknowledge and then continue rather than to like just let that destroy your motivation or your momentum in continuing to practice and continuing to try at something. So that applies to like so many things beyond art, like hobbies, career choices, like sports, gym bro. But that's like such a general word of advice to give, is to like, oh, don't give up. Like I know that's like age old, but that is so true. Like it cannot be any truer when you're, you know, constantly encountering an obstacle that you yourself have created. It's important to start undoing it within yourself as well. Like cultivated or encouraged by like external factors. Let's say like your professor said something that you took to heart, or you took something very personal, or it is now like changed your perception of your art. You need to start doing the undoing and learn that like, or not learn, but like tell yourself that it's okay to feel this negative about your art, and then continue to acknowledge rather than to internalize. So,
but then like bringing in the positive.
Knowing that your art may not always look this way, and not every piece is going to look this way, and it is okay for it to look this way. So undoing and reframing is very important, because it's still yours. Like that's still something that you created, and it's something worth like you placing value on. And you can still say like, okay, this is ugly and I never make things in this way, but it's still valuable that you learned something from it, that you've experimented. There's still like, you need to insert some form of positivity in that, because that will better cultivate that like learning experience within yourself and like foster that better relationship with your own artwork.
New Year's Eve always puts me in sort of a bad mood, maybe even the winter time as a whole. I think it's because I grow too attached to a year, to basically the abstract of all the potential in months of time I have to spend growing in my art and in my personal life. But I think once that time ticks closer and closer to December 31st, the idea of time passing and slipping out of my fingers is something that makes me kind of uncomfortable and lose sight of focus and purpose in my art and my life. And I get a little too existential, but we won't be going down that path in this video. But basically, it's just kind of been that way for much of my like young adult and adult life. Also, I just hate the cold. I live in Florida, so I'm happy that it doesn't get too cold here and not for very long. But the past couple weeks, I've been waking up cold, going throughout my day cold, and going to sleep cold, and it's starting to wear down on my energy. I think both physically and mentally. And I also hate wearing pants too. I prefer shorts most of the time, so it's just an added physical discomfort. And as I'm doing this voiceover right now, I'm packing to spend like my first weekend of the new year in frigid cold, out of state, and yeah, so yay, traveling and the cold. So double whammy of things Shay despises. But regardless of all that, looking back on 2023, my art from a year ago has definitely improved, especially digitally. I really tried to practice digital art and practice sketching digitally, and my confidence has grown so much more with the projects and practice I've completed throughout the year, but kind of still have this nagging feeling that I'm kind of like nowhere close to where I want to be even a year after graduating. Now, I think I might be being like too dramatic right now. I often forget like my successes and only tend to like focus on the negatives, that's my own fault. And I think it's definitely just a part of an artist's journey and drive to always be seeking the next project and improving on oneself. And like I said before, the cold weather and this time of the year doesn't exactly prime me for the best mindset, but I think more recently I felt even more critical and harsh on myself. I find myself like constantly comparing myself to the art that I see on like Instagram or even on YouTube. And once again, maybe this is just irritability caused by the cold and just the typical end of the year blues that I tend to have during this time. But I think ultimately it touches on like a deeper issue I've been having lately, and that is not having a clear focus with what I want to do, both in regards to my larger body of work, like all the work that I make in total, and in individual pieces as I'm working on something. So in this video, I've been showing a speed paint or progress of a piece that I had started sketching over my winter break and spent New Year's Eve and into the new year painting and rendering before I went on my trip out of state. And I think this piece is a really great example to showcase what I've been struggling with and kind of explain that. So the main concept for this piece was a kind of a relief from the cold. I was really just yearning for warmer days and refreshment, and like also wanting to draw some sort of reindeer or stag for the holidays. So it's kind of like this idea of pairing a typically winter associated animal with some spring elements through oranges. It just was a really fun idea in my mind. Also, I've been loving orange and blue color combos lately. I definitely want my work to move into more of a storytelling, character-driven way this year, and I thought this small idea of some sort of spring spirit or like spring tidings in like a midwinter giving hope and reassurance would be a simple start to reaching my goals this year, and just kind of like a launching point. And as I started to work on it, I could already tell this piece would be a struggle, because at first I had a hard time deciding what the composition should be. I was having difficulty with getting both the reindeer's head and antlers and the figure all in one composition in a way that made sense and was a strong strong design wise. And this was probably some sort of omen that I needed to step away for a little bit or take a little bit more time in planning, but I think I was kind of stubborn and I felt like I needed to rush to get it done. And also, I hadn't drawn or made any art for most of the week of Christmas, so I think I was just a bit rusty and just not in the right headspace. So I finally got to a thumbnail and color palette that I was happy with, but rendering it out took me so far away from the original idea that I had. I feel like this typical typically happens when my mind changes halfway through on how I want the painting to look. I think I was looking at more like dramatic paintings, something more like quote unquote epic, as I was working on this one, and was inspired by them and felt like I had to warp the idea to match what I was seeing. So I guess I wasn't necessarily unsuccessful with this painting, but my focus changed through the painting process, which can be good in some instances, because I find a lot of the times when I'm creating, I get ideas as I'm working on a piece, but a lot of the times it can be frustrating and end up leaving me lost or hate the finished product, even though it's not bad. Even though it's not a bad painting, it just didn't capture what I had in my mind due to how it changed through the process of the piece. And I think this is just like, I may talk about a little bit more, I can't remember in the script, but I think this is just caused by just being distracted and not like focusing on one thing, trying to like implement too many things or changing course halfway through, and then the composition doesn't really like match the feeling that you're trying to get, like just creates an issue, like just being distracted by things. So I think I was really hoping to start the year on a strong note, but after I had taken a little bit of a break, I should not have expected a masterpiece to develop within a couple of days after not moving my hands. So I think it was a bit of silliness on my part, along with just being overly critical and negative about the piece and just being distracted by things. So overall, like I said, the piece isn't bad. I really like how the colors and the lighting turned out, and I just feel like the process of this piece wasn't as fun as it is usually, like save for the rendering of the leaves and oranges. That was fun. I think this was due to a lack of like further planning and pre-sketching. I did plan the composition, and I did have a lot of preliminary sketches, specifically of the reindeer. I had like no idea how I wanted to draw a reindeer and was really concerned about getting that right, but I felt like that took away from the main focus of the piece I was working on, because I wanted the main focus to be the oranges and the character. So looking back on this, I should have delegated more time to planning out the things that mattered in the piece and where I wanted the focus to be. With the human figure, I don't have an issue with them anatomically or the way that I rendered them. It's nice, but I didn't put as much thought into their design and like little things that would tell you about their character. Like it seems very, I guess a word would be like boring. I still don't think it's like completely boring, but it's just like there's nothing really, nothing about the character design that's telling you about the character. So, and that's a really important thing in storytelling. So I think a lot of this like confusion and distraction and rushing was partially due to a time limit and feeling like I had to rush to get this out and complete it. Like I said, soon after like recording this voiceover, I'll be packing to leave for a family trip out of state. It was just a bunch of factors that just weren't lining up, so it just led to like kind of a worse mindset, and mindset is a really big part of drawing and creating and exploring things and being open to things and figuring things out, and just like a positive mindset is so much better to have than a negative one. And I know this video is getting really long already, but I think that's another thing I want to unlearn from last year, maybe even years prior, is I don't have to rush everything. I don't have to like completely get things done on like a rapid manner. I think I'd rather have a partially done piece to post for a weekly video, one that I'm happy with in the direction that it's going, than rush the important preliminary sketches and studies and concepts that go before, which are like the really important parts of the artwork in my own process. And I think I just got into a bad habit of rushing to complete things due to having to post a video or post to Instagram. But this part of my process, like I said, is so important to my creativity and building the foundations for a final piece. And I determined that I don't want to rush it. Like, it's not a good idea to rush it. So yeah, taking things slowing down has already brought so much more quality and improvement to my artwork. And so if something takes a little extra time, that's okay, because it'll make it more worth it than then rushing and getting like something more mediocre or not as great. So I still feel success in that I made something. I feel like starting is the hardest part, and while working on this piece, it gave me so many other ideas with how I could take this concept further. And I felt like I was able to demonstrate a lot of digital painting skills and confidence that I picked up last year, but now it's using those skills to create something that communicates a story through its characters, compositions, and color. 2024 will be the year of reevaluation and nurturing the art and concepts that I care about. I love challenging myself with bigger, more complicated projects, but keeping that focus and intention throughout the piece or body of work is the biggest hurdle right now in my art journey. And like I said, I tend to be distracted and kind of more recently carry an anxious energy through a project, worrying if I'm making the right decision and lacking confidence and skills that used to come so easily. So I think that just takes time to get comfortable and proficient with just making again, and I shouldn't expect to learn everything in one go and be content. I think this first month of the year will kind of just be like a getting back on track month after a year of growing pains, trying new things, and building my business. It's going to be great to rest and enjoy the process of making art that's meaningful to me, and I hope that you would enjoy it as well. I do have a tentative goal sort of for like the first quarter of the year. I'm kind of figuring out if this will actually work for me sustainably, and that is creating like one fully colored illustration per week to build my like comfortability and confidence and foster more of like a frequent sketching habit, and also to be able to add some things to my portfolio, because I kind of mentioned kind of like restarting my portfolio, but we'll see. I just want to take my time and make things that matter to me, and just recalibrating my art interests and what I'm excited about, and just starting fresh. I really do think last year was like a growth period for like business skills and marketing, and getting to a place where I could financially support my creative practice. With those income sources being established, it allowed me to hopefully spend this year, 2024, spend most of the year focusing on and nurturing the art and the stories I care about. And I think even though this piece didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it, and the New Year's kind of gets me down a bit, and the cold weather sucks, that idea of just getting to slow down, rest, and just spend time on my artwork and be able to sustain myself is bringing me a lot of hope and energy to embrace 2024. And I quickly want to mention that setting out to achieve this goal and having the time and energy to put into my art would not have been possible without your support, viewership, and engagement with my artwork. Thank you all so much for continuing to comment, like, and share my content, and I'm just truly grateful for your support. I couldn't have planned to make all these goals without how much my channel grew last year. And that being said, it's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found some sort of encouragement, inspiration, or maybe even relatability after watching this, and feel more confident in achieving your own goals this year. And another thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. A reminder to check out squarespace.com/sketchesofshay to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using my code sketchesofshay. Please leave a warm comment down below, because I'm probably freezing in my room right now reading it, and leave your art goals down below as well. It'll be fun looking back on this video a year from now to see how all of us have grown, so make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more art content from me. I do have a sketchbook tour coming soon this month, and some other fun things, so make sure to stay connected. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I plan to be a bit more active there with hopefully posting these weekly illustrations along with some daily sketches and doodles throughout the week. And a quick note, I did close my Ko-fi memberships in December because I am moving to Patreon and finalizing some things for Discord, so that should be coming soon as well, so keep an eye out for that. I'll probably do more frequent updates on Instagram, so yeah, that's that. Okay guys, thank you for drawing with me and listening to my rambles. I will see you next week, and I wish you a very happy and healthy new year.